Good morning, everybody. It's really nice to see you this morning. We have Joe Maruschak here with Into the Business Model Canvas, and Joe will explain what the Business Model Canvas is, but it's essentially the startup version of a business plan. So if y'all are working on your business plan, you're in the right place. I'm Ariel Rubin, the Lane County Venture Catalyst with Oregon Rain. I also own my own marketing firm and like to say I'm the innovation strategist for my family's business, Hummingbird Wholesale, right in Eugene. The agenda this morning, I'm just going to do this quick 5-minute intro, and then Joe will take it forward. Joe, I actually meant to ask you, do you want to do questions throughout, or should we have a break at the end for Q&A? Oh, you might be muted.
Throughout the presentation.
Okay, sweet. So we'll do questions throughout, and then we'll close up around 11. Virtual etiquette, I always have to say this, but please remain muted throughout the session. If you have any questions, you can put them in the chat, or you can use the raise hand feature, and I'll call on you to unmute also. And this is a place for fun, learning, and inclusivity. Please be polite, supportive, and positive in conversation and in the chat. Just a reminder that this is being recorded, and I'll be able to share it with folks after the fact as well. We'll post it on YouTube. Our mission at Oregon Rain is to partner with communities to catalyze entrepreneurial ecosystems, connect entrepreneurs to resources, including overlooked entrepreneurs, and contribute to the creation of prosperous economies across rural Oregon. And I like to say we're building infrastructure for startups and small businesses in rural communities by activating mentorship opportunities, networking, workshops, physical assets, capital, news and media, local government, workforce, etc. And we can't do this alone, so I'm catalyzing community out in the rural cities. So we love building partnerships. Please join in. We're stronger together. Please come and share your ideas. Especially now, it's important to stay connected, and all are welcome. Huge thank you to our partners, mentors, entrepreneurs, and funders. We love creating thriving entrepreneurial ecosystems with all of you. This is our team. You've probably seen us. We have a pretty big team now, and we're growing by the minute. Caroline Cummings is our executive director. Jennifer writes all of our grants. The rest of us are venture catalysts, or we also have entrepreneurs stationed in communities supporting on the ground. What's next? We have lots of resources that are always available, so please email me anytime. And I also have weekly ongoing mentorship, so go ahead and sign up. On the 1st, we have How to Craft a Successful Brand with Christina Scott. And I actually worked with Christina at a previous startup company, and she is fabulous. So I really recommend coming to this. And I'm also just about to launch a 5-part food and beverage series in April. So stay tuned. I'm partnering with Micah Elkonen with Eugene's Table. So stay tuned for that. And I'm going to pass it over to Joe now. Welcome, Joe. We're really excited to see you here. Joe, I consider to be a mentor and friend. He ran the Rain Eugene Accelerator for years. And so here we go. Go ahead, Joe.
I'll just go. I'll give my bona fides. I founded my own startup company in 2001, which I sold to a larger company, which I then joined in the executive team. We then sold that in 2007 to IAC, which is a very large firm out of New York. From 2009 to 2013, I was active in the startup community, lead organizer for Startup Weekend since 2012 in Eugene. And in 2017, I started a small seed fund. So I also invest in startups, besides being the executive director of Rain Eugene and running the Rain Eugene Accelerator. And right now, I'm also a startup coach at the University of Oregon. So it's like, those are my bona fides. I've been involved in this for a very, very long time. And with that, I will start sharing my screen and start this presentation. Hopefully I picked the right screen. So hopefully you can see that. Can you guys see the screen?
Yeah.
Okay.
Great.
Value proposition and tools. So what we're going to do is we're going to walk through this.
Yes.
I'm going to go put this in grid view if I can, and make it big so I can see all of you. So I'm going to walk through this. This is about value proposition and tools. And this is about the business model canvas. And I'm going to go through and talk about a little bit of the evolution of the business model canvas, of how we got to now, so you sort of understand it in context, and throw some other tools and resources up there too, so you understand this completely. The business model canvas we'll talk about at the end mostly, and I'll explain why I'm doing it at the end right now, which is the business model canvas came out first, and a lot of the output from early business model canvases were not focused enough on the value proposition. So people would go through the business model canvas, breathe through the value proposition, and then everything else in the business model canvas was wrong because it was based on not doing the work initially for the business model canvas. The way this came out is the business model canvas came out first, and then another canvas called the value proposition canvas came out second after it in order to walk people through that. So with that, I'm going to start the presentation, value proposition tools. So we're going to talk about the value proposition, and the value proposition really is at the core of what is your business. So a business, my definition, a business delivers something of value to a customer. And I'm going to go through these words. Business delivers value to a customer. I'm going to keep whittling it down. Delivers value to a customer, value to customer. And so what we're trying to figure out with the value proposition is, what is the value you are delivering to your customer? The keywords are value, how you're delivering the value, and to the customer. And I'm going to grow this really, really big because it's really, really important here is the customer has to be at the center of what you're trying to provide for them. I'm going to go through this because this is the first resource I'm going to introduce you to. This is a book called The 10 Types of Innovation. And if you Google the 10 Types of Innovation, what you're going to find is a book and a framework that looks like this, that actually walks you through the 10 types of innovation. And I introduce it here because in, I'd say 80% of the startups that I work with, they're focused right here on product performance or the product system. They're so focused on their product, they're not really thinking about the other components of what you can do with a startup or with a company to deliver value to your customers. So we look at this. This is all on the back end, which we call the configuration. This is the profit model structure, the process, the network of how everything works. And the other side of product is what we call the customer channel. What is the customer experience? The example I always use here is Airbnb and Uber. Both Airbnb and Uber have a product that is no different from any other product that's out there. If you're to think of Uber, what Uber provides is a car and a driver. The product itself, the human driver of the car, is just a car and another human being. Airbnb, what they provide is space in a home, undifferentiated from any other house. Okay, it's not the product; it's how you deliver the product and how you configure it behind the scenes in order to make it more effectively deliver the value to the customer that might matter. So part of this is getting people to stop thinking solely about what it is they're selling and think a lot more broadly about what it is you're doing for your customer and where you're being innovative. And that's actually where most of the startup innovation has happened in the last 10 years. So this is a good tool, kind of schematic, called 10 Types of Innovation, worth checking out. Okay, so we're going to go back to this. How you communicate value to your customers and how you communicate it is at the key to value proposition. I'm going to use an example here. This is where everyone can unmute or raise their hand and ask. I'm going to open up chat here on the side, which I can't see right now. So Ariel will have to prime me on this. This is a product that actually came out of Eugene, was on Shark Tank. It's called the Gold Rush Nugget Bucket. And here you can get it on Amazon. It's deluxe gold panning and prospecting kit with a folding shovel in camouflage.
That's awesome.
So how many of you are thinking, I want a gold prospecting and I want a Gold Rush Nugget Bucket? You can raise your hand if you think, oh, there's one. There's two, possibly. Think it might be fun. So right now, the actual ad on Amazon doesn't do a really good job of presenting the value proposition. Their website, on the other hand, does an amazing job with their value proposition, which I'm going to go to the next slide. Oops, I'm going to click on the slides. There's the next slide. The Gold Rush Nugget Bucket. Fun for the whole family. Gold prospecting made easy for everyone, complete with the image. So now instead of going to Amazon looking at the Gold Rush Nugget Bucket, you're going, huh, what are we doing this weekend that's supposed to be nice? Gold prospecting. We can go out to the river with the whole family. We can dig in the mud. We can actually look for gold. What you're buying is fun for the whole family for a weekend. With the price of the Gold Rush Nugget Bucket, you're like, $100? Yeah, it's double the price of a movie that's going to get us out of the house all day. It's worth the expense. And what you're buying is an experience with your family. And then when you actually have the Gold Rush Nugget Bucket, if you bring it home and stick it in the corner of your garage, what you have is a memory. So every time you're cleaning your garage for spring, or you see that bucket, and what you have is a bunch of happy memories of a wonderful day out on the river with your family. So this is really the key of the value proposition. This is the product. It's a bucket and a shovel and a whole bunch of other stuff that comes in that bucket. And this is the value proposition, what it does for you. So the key with your business is really nailing the value proposition. How is your customer going to use this? How are they actually going to apply this in their world, and what value does it bring to them? And this is entertainment for the family, not a bucket with some plastic in it, with a camouflage shovel. And to get there, for you, we have this tool called the Business Model Canvas. It's called Business Model Generation. So this is a book that you can buy. You can also find a lot of the information online through Strategyzer with a Y. So it's that little circle right there with the Strategyzer series, strategyzer.com. And if you search Business Model Generation, it's going to take you to a website that has a whole bunch of tools there. You can also purchase the book on Amazon. This is the first book that came out in the series. The Business Model Canvas looks like this. It actually is broken up into 9 segments. Value propositions, customer segments, customer relationships, channels, revenue streams, cost structure, key partners, key activities, and key resources. And I'm going to cover this in more detail at the end, where we're going to talk about each one. But right now, we're going to talk a little bit about the evolution and how we got here. This is all about time and capital efficiency. So way back in the day, the preferred method of doing a business was creating a business plan. You'd sit down, you'd think through your entire business, and you'd write a 60-page plan of how you were going to start your business and grow your business. And then you'd start on the first day. And the first time you interact with your customers, you found out that what you wrote in your business plan was wrong. And the business plan becomes a stack of paper that you throw in a corner and mostly never look at again. And this was replaced with and we call it the plan, build, pray model, which is like, come up with a plan, convince someone to give you money, then you build it, and you hope that you were right. This is oftentimes what we would call the field of dreams. If you build it, they will come. And this was the method for building businesses for the longest time. You come with an idea, you create the idea, you put it out in the world, and see if the market responds. And sometimes it did, and often it didn't. And we have actually some examples of really, really huge failures that didn't work out. Who here has ever heard of the Iridium phone? Do you remember that, the Iridium phone, the satellites, the ones where they spent a couple $2 billion launching satellite phones in the orbit that were going to be better than cell phones because you can get cell service anywhere except inside your house because satellites don't work through walls? Huge flop. They made an assumption about what the market wanted. They put it out into the market and it got zero adoption. Very, very expensive mistake. A more recent expensive mistake was QB. Who here knows what QB is? The short-lived QB. This was the streaming service that launched in January and shut down in April. And they spent a couple $2 billion doing it. It was a big flop. They put it out into the market. What they were going to do is think of it, TikTok, slightly longer format for adults. So think of movies on the level of Game of Thrones, but 15-minute segments. They spent a lot of money producing content with the assumption that people would be watching these 15-minute micro segments of really high quality content, like while they were commuting or drinking their coffee in the morning. One, COVID, no one's commuting, so it didn't work there. And two, the market just thought it was kind of dumb. It really wasn't hitting the mark with the customers. So another very expensive mistake where they made some assumptions that didn't work. So what we've always talk about now is trying to find product market fit. So the process used to create what's called product market fit, which is actually trying to find if there's a fit for your product in a market and find that market before you actually put all the effort and expense of fully creating your product in its finished form, doing all the marketing and placing it out in the market and seeing if there's a response. So product market fit, we call this spaghetti on the wall approach, which is you make this assumption, instead of making the assumption that your business plan is going to work, you make the assumption that your business plan is probably not going to work. So you put something out there and at least you're looking for where it sticks. So the spaghetti on the wall approach is actually an evolution of the business plan model, because at least there's an awareness that when you put your thing out to the world, it may not work. You're going to have to look at what does and discard the things that don't. And we call this problem solution fit, which is before actually creating your full product and sticking out into the market to try and find product market fit, what you're actually trying to do is see if the solution that you've come up with for the perceived problem that you perceive the customers have is actually a match. And there's two stages to this. We say get problem solution fit, and then you may get product market fit. And I'll explain the difference between the two right now, actually. Problem solution fit is you have a solution for a customer problem. You have to verify that the problem exists and the customers are willing to pay for it. Product market fit makes some different assumptions, that you can actually create the product that's a cost that is effective for customers to buy it at a price that they want. You may be able to find problem solution fit, as in identify the problem and clearly create a solution, but you may not be able to get to product market fit, as in you may not be able to produce the product at a cost that customers are willing to pay for to solve their problem. But it's a two-tiered problem. If you can't get problem solution fit, there will never be product market fit. If you have problem solution fit, you may get product market fit if you can actually figure out how to make it in a cost-effective manner and get it in front of customers in a cost-effective manner. This is where the business model canvas comes in. So the business model canvas, we're going to talk about this. So this, the first one we're going to talk about, it's a nine squares in the box, and it's separated out into value propositions, customer segments, customer relationships, channels, revenue streams, cost structure, key partners, key activities, key resources. So if you look at everything on the side that is customer relationships, channels, customer segments, and revenue streams, that's everything that's customer facing. We call it the front of the house. Think of it as a theater. That's what you see on the stage. Everything, the key partners, key activities, key resources, and cost structures, everything to the left side of the canvas is what we call the back of the house, backstage, something the customer will never see. It's actually how your business is configured in order to deliver value to the customer. We focus on the right side of the canvas first, what the customer sees to solve that problem before we do anything else. I'm going to describe the right side of the canvas first, which is the value propositions. So value propositions is where you start. Value proposition is simply an articulation of the value that you're providing for your customer. So you work hand in hand with your customer segments right there. And when we talk about customer segmentation, when you say your customer, you can't just throw out a customer, a prototypical customer as every human on the planet, because the behaviors of customers will be different and the value proposition may be different for each customer. If you think of something that you're delivering to a college student, say housing for a college student or a food meal plan, you have the end user of the product, the student, and you have the customer of that product, usually the parents. So actually you're appealing to two different customers in your customer segment, and the value proposition may be different for each. I'm going to present the value proposition canvas a little later, but realize that this is where the original business model canvas broke down, and that people were going through their value proposition and their customer segments way too fast. As a prototypical example, people would be making a soap company. I'm making a soap company. What are you making? I'm making soap. For what? For people to use as soap, for people to wash. Breezed right through it, just said, I'm making soap for people to clean themselves. And in the example of soaps, particularly specialty soaps, why would you buy a particular soap instead of Ivory? Ivory, you can get it through Amazon, or you can get it at Safeway. It's cheap and it does the job. It's soap. It's been around for hundreds of years. Why would anyone buy anything different? And a lot of the specialty soaps are because of the smell, because of the way it's produced, because of what it does for the environment. There's a whole bunch of other things that people value that might make them want to buy your soap over Ivory. But a lot of companies will breeze through this really, really quickly and just say, what is my value proposition? For the people that want to buy my product, I'm making it, is what it comes across as, which is not good enough. That is essentially building a product, throwing it out there, and seeing who your customers are. thinking through this process really, really, really deeply is actually key to actually understanding it. This, and we call this, you know, your customer engagement cycle. This is done mostly through the third box, which is what you do third, which is your customer relationships. Customer relationships is how you communicate value to your customer, and ideally how you receive input back from the customer. Now with social media and the internet, you can do a lot of getting out there to figure out what customer sentiment is without physically putting your product in market and then trying to figure out who buys it by watching them, by being sneaky standing in a store. You can actually communicate with your customers to try and drive the values that they're looking for before you produce something. So this is your customer relationship. Inside of customer relationship, there's a bunch of different ways you can communicate with them. Using an example, you can do ads on Facebook or Twitter. Certain industries, and I'll use healthcare as an example, do really, really well on Instagram. If you go on Instagram and search yoga, you're going to find probably 50,000 yoga instructors, all of them doing quite well, all of what they're following Instagram, where they are on Instagram, putting short images and little clips to movies about them doing yoga to sign up for their classes. And it's actually a very, very effective channel for communicating with your customers. So what your product is going to do and what channel you're going to be talking about your customer having your customer relationship through differs for your product, and testing them all is imperative. And part of this is your customer segment will define the channel. If you were selling a food service to students at the University of Oregon, the channel to communicate with the students is different than the channel to communicate with the parents. How you're going to reach them, how you're going to make them aware of it is different, and you have to test them both. And then we talk about the delivery channel. Delivery channel is how the product is actually physically delivered to your customer. This is it in a store? Is it sold through e-commerce? If it's sold through e-commerce, is it done on your own site, or is it done through a channel like Etsy or eBay? This is how you have to think about, the actual physical way that your customer actually receives the product. It's different than the relationship you have to your customer. You can have a relationship with your customer that talks about the qualities of your product. How they purchase it might be at a store. They know about you, they interact with you, they are on Facebook, they're participating in a greater community around your product, but how they physically get it might be as simple as them going to Walmart to purchase it. Two different things you have to think about. And all of this then leads to the revenue stream. The revenue stream is how much money are you making from your business? What is actually paid for your product or service? After you've thought about those 5 things, and in revenue streams, this is where you start thinking about pricing. Again, pricing sensitivity, this is something that you find out by talking to your customers. And then we go to the back half of the canvas. And this is where we start talking about product market fit. So if you can identify the problem through your value proposition, identify the correct channel to communicate with your customers, get the feedback that says that the product will work, deliver how they will purchase it, and figure how much they'll spend, you're halfway there. Okay, you have problem solution fit. And now we have to start working on product market fit. And that goes with everything on the other side of the canvas, which is how you configure your business. The way we talk about this is key activities. And it's important that you break these up into key activities because of the next 2 slides, which are key resources and key partners. The key activities are you just listing all the things that you have to do that only you can do in order to make your business work. If you're making soap, the soap making is usually an activity that you reserve for yourself. You're making a specialty soap, there's something special about the product. If there's nothing special about a certain activity that you have to do, and I will think of this as, unless you're doing a financial product, your accounting, your insurance, HR, a lot of these things are things that you don't necessarily have to focus on. Those are where your key partners come in. A lot of the things that you're doing could be done by someone else more effectively if they know what they're doing, and it's not key to your business. The accounting of your business is probably similar to other businesses who need accounting, so you don't need to become an expert in accounting. If the customer relationship is key to actually how you're growing your customer base, using the Instagram example of a yoga instructor, that channel is something you're going to have to become expert at. That is the key activity. So breaking up all of the activities you need to run your business down and looking at what you need to get them done is really, really key here. This is where we come and start talking about the cost structure. There's what you would ideally be paying yourself if you were making money. If you have a prototype business, at first you're making nothing because you're not selling anything yet. But once you are starting to make money, you have to start thinking of what would it take you to do that activity, or more importantly, if your company is growing, what is it going to cost you to do that activity if you're going to have to pay someone to do this? And this is if you're doing marketing, if you're actually making massive amounts of soap, you're going to actually have to start employing people to do it. You have to thinking about those key activities, the time it takes, and the resources it takes to do it. This goes into the key resources. The key resources ends up being this bucket of what do I have available to actually get this done? And this is where you put your own resources that you have, your own physical labor, and other resources that you can reach out to. This could be your lawyers, your accountant, and other things that you need to actually grow your business. All of those will determine your cost structure through the canvas. And the idea is if the revenue stream is greater than the cost, you have product market fit. And if you don't, then you don't. You have a business that doesn't work. You have one that can't make margin. And even though your customers might be satisfied with what you're offering, you can't deliver it at the cost that's effective to actually provide value to the customer in something that, in a way that's sustainable. Tracking it through this box, particularly if you start accounting for the key activities and the key resources, will actually allow you to stay focused on that. Primarily because the founder of a company is doing a lot of the key activities. At first, you may be making revenue, but if there's other things that you have to do, this is paying for packaging or paying for shipping, you may end up in a situation where you're making money, but you're not making any profit margin that allows you to pay yourself as a founder. So it's very, very important that you keep the resources, partners, and activities all separate and keep an accounting of your cost structure so you can actually see what it's doing. Then you can start looking at the other segments of it. The customer relationships, the channels, those are the things that you're actually doing. You're doing activities to actually make these, you're doing activities to actually make them happen. And understanding all the different activities in a granular way will actually allow you to keep track of the resources and the cost of your activities. Because if you have to do it a little bit cheaper, there's certain things you can look at in customer relationships and channels and try to do it a little less of that and actually see if it works so you can make the cost structure work. So this way is actually a way that allows you to mentally approach this in these boxes. The other interesting thing about this, if you start looking at the 10 types of innovation, you can find what's called comparables. Can you hold on a second? My wife's on the phone and she was being very noisy. So when you're starting to, where was I? Oh. So when you're thinking about this, if you're looking at each one of these individual boxes, you can find comparable companies that may not be in your market segment that's doing something in a way that you would do it that's different than the others are doing it that may be effective. As using the yoga example, you may be selling specialty soaps. You may be deciding that the best way to sell specialty soaps is on Instagram. And then what you're going to do is do pictures of exotic soaps in exotic locations and grow an Instagram following, and then people will be purchasing your soap because of this aspiration to be in Hawaii or Fiji, and you're sort of creating a feeling that they want to be a part of. So your customer relationship channel, you might steal it from yoga instructors and say, I think the customer relationship I can steal from that company and try it this way because no one else is doing it that way. So it allows you to look at each segment of your business in a very, very defined way. And if we go back to the 10 types of innovation, this framework where they've taken apart a business and looked at all the different ways you can do it beyond just the product, both the customer relationship and the configuration, which matches perfectly with this, which is the customer facing side and the back end side, you can actually find something innovative and inventive by looking somewhere else as in I'm going to do soap like Uber. Well, that sounds kind of silly, but an app for soap might work. Any questions on this so far? Everyone's muted. Any questions?
You're welcome to just unmute and go for it.
Yeah.
I'm looking at this, and it can also be used for service-oriented businesses. It would just be a different.
Yes.
You would look at how you can replicate your efforts in a different way.
Yes.
For instance, workshops.
Yep. Any type of business. So product businesses it works for, services businesses it also works for very, very well. The channel becomes a little bit different. The channel in a services business is how is the service delivered to them. So that ends up being that's very interesting because the way people get a service delivered to them is it's an open book. You can try so many different models. And that's where you get really, really creative by looking at the way other people are delivering services in a different way. I'm working with a company right now that's delivering online book clubs. And this is an extension of launch, what they call book launch activities. There's a whole ecosystem around book launches now. And these online book clubs are becoming a thing in COVID where people are joining these online communities that are a book club around the book where they'll structure the book through a reading group and have a one-on-one with the author. And it's like a book club that you would join, but a virtual book club delivering the same thing in a brand new, interesting way. So any more questions? No? I'm going to move on to the next section. So this is where we actually talk about the value proposition canvas. This is the second book in the series that came after Business Model Generation, which is called Value Proposition Design. And there's an entire book on this. And this came out after Value Proposition Design because a lot of the people experiencing this, trying to implement this in the real world, we're finding people breezing through the value proposition very, very quickly. At the core of this book is the value proposition canvas, which is actually, it's the first two boxes, just the value proposition, the customer segments, where you're actually trying to match out your product service to a customer, and these two terms that they come up with called pains and gains. What is the customer pain, or what could a customer gain in order if they use your product or service? The way to think about best is called customer jobs. This is like the thing that you ever hear someone talking about, what is the customer's job, is the best way to think about it. What is the customer trying to solve for? And in order to do that, I'm going to try to bring up a YouTube video, which I hope will work. Tell me if it doesn't.
Joe, you might need, yeah, I don't think we can hear it yet. So you might need to stop.
Can you hear it?
Hi, my name is Clay Christensen.
Can you hear it? It's working? Okay. This is the video that best describes customer jobs.
I'm a professor at the Harvard Business School. I brought with me a set of puzzles, all related to innovation. We decided that the way we teach marketing is at the core of what makes motivation difficult to achieve. The most helpful way we've thought of it so far is that we actually hire products to do things for us. And understanding what job we have to do in our lives for which we would hire a product is really the key to cracking this problem of motivating customers to buy what we're offering. So I wanted just to tell you a story about a project we did.
Oh, Joe, I think it was coming through your headphones. So
Studied this problem up the gazoo. They brought in customers who fit the profile of the quintessential milkshake consumer. They'd give them samples and ask, could you tell us how we can improve our milkshakes so you buy more of them? Do you want it chocolatey or cheaper, chunkier, chewier? They get very clear feedback. They would then improve the milkshake on those dimensions, and it had no impact on sales or profits whatsoever. So one of our colleagues went in with a different question on his mind, and that was, I wonder what job arises in people's lives that cause them to come to this restaurant to hire a milkshake. So we stood in a restaurant for 18 hours one day and just took very careful data. What time did they buy these milkshakes? What were they wearing? Were they alone? Did they buy other food with it? Did they eat it in a restaurant or drive off with it? It turned out that nearly half of the milkshakes were sold before 8 o'clock in the morning. The people who bought them were always alone. It was the only thing they bought, and they all got in the car and drove off with it. So to figure out what job they were trying to hire it to do, we came back the next day and stood outside the restaurant so we could confront these folks as they left, milkshake in hand. And in language that they could understand, we essentially asked, "Excuse me, please, but I got to sort this puzzle out. What job were you trying to do for yourself that caused you to come here and hire that milkshake?" And they'd struggle to answer, so we'd then help them by asking other questions like, "Well, think about the last time you were in the same situation, needing to get the same job done, but you didn't come here to hire a milkshake. What did you hire?" And then as we put all of their answers together, it became clear that they all had the same job to do in the morning. And that is, they had a long and boring drive to work. And they just needed something to do while they drove to keep the commute interesting. One hand had to be on the wheel, but somebody had given them another hand and there wasn't anything in it. And they just needed something to do while they drove. They weren't hungry yet, but they knew they'd be hungry by 10 o'clock. So they also wanted something that would just go down there and stay for their morning. Good question. What do I hire when I do this job? You know, I've never framed the question that way before, but last Friday, I hired a banana to do the job. Take my word for it, never hire bananas. They're gone in 3 minutes. You're hungry by 7:30. If you promise not to tell my wife, I probably hire donuts twice a week, but they don't do it well either. They're gone fast. They crumb all over my clothes. They get my fingers gooey. Sometimes I hire bagels, but as you know, they're so dry and tasteless. Then I have to steer the car with my knees while I'm putting jam on them. And then if the phone rings, we got a crisis. I remember I hired a Snickers bar once, but I felt so guilty. I've never hired Snickers again. Let me tell you, when I come here and hire this milkshake, it is so viscous that it easily takes me 20 minutes to suck it up that thin little straw. Who cares what the ingredients are? I don't. All I know is I'm full all morning and it fits right here in my cup holder. Well, it turns out that the milkshake does the job better than any of the competitors, which in the customer's minds are not Burger King milkshakes, but it's bananas, donuts, bagels, Snickers bars, coffee, and so on. But I hope you can see how, if you understand the job, how to improve the product becomes just obvious.
Okay, so that's sort of the best video that I've ever seen on the subject that really gets your mind thinking in that way, which is about the customer job. Really drives you to really understand the value proposition. What is the customer trying to solve for? It's actually really hard to do, particularly if you have an idea in your head of what you're solving the problem for. You have an idea for a product or service, you think it solves the problem, so you go out and build it and you put it in front of customers, and they either respond or they don't. Going in and talking to them to really deeply understand that. Why would they use their product or service? What does it solve for them? The soap example, I know it's close to my heart. I love when my wife goes out and buys like these strange lavender soaps. She always picks me up a lavender soap every time she goes out, as opposed to ivory. What does it solve for me? I don't know. It just feels good when you wash your hands and you got something nice to smell. I mean, it's a little small part of my life that makes my life feel a little bit more full. Can I define that job? I'm probably having difficulty doing it right now. But you, as someone who's starting a company, need to get really, really good at trying to understand the reasons why I'm doing something that are behind the simple idea of why I would buy soap to clean something or any product or service. It's wicked hard, which is why you have people like Ariel and the venture capitalists, because this is a very, very hard thing to actually do, is go out and really truly understand what it is you're actually solving for all of your different customers. And it can vary by customer, which is why we tried to segment them if you can actually get a customer segment that responds the same way to the same question of what they're trying to solve for, then you can successfully make a product. And if you look at the example that Clay Christensen presented, that was either McDonald's or Burger King that was actually having the problem with the milkshake. They had a problem of trying to figure out how to sell more milkshakes because they weren't thinking about it the right way, and actually had to hire a team of experts from Harvard to figure it out for them. So if you find this challenging and find it difficult, just know that you're in good company. And this is all part of the process. It really comes down to this one thing, which is validate that the problem exists. Articulate the problem, come up with the value proposition, go talk to the customers, validate that you're actually solving the problem that they are actually trying to solve with your product. Communicate to them that you are solving that problem with your product. And some of this, again, may not be what people think it is. Hey, that feeling of wanting to be on a faraway island, I get that feeling. Here's my soap. This will solve that for you. And if it does for a moment and they're willing to buy it, that's awesome. But sometimes how you solve the problem, it may not be apparent to them unless you explain it to them. Okay. So go out there, validate the problem exists. And articulating that solution is the key. You got to do it clearly, concisely, and very, very quickly. And that's the end of the presentation. And now I can take questions on anything, or we can have a conversation about anything you guys want. How'd I do?
Awesome. Loved it. Yeah. And everybody, I put the value proposition canvas and the business model canvas both in the chat. So you're welcome to download those and you can start working on them. And I will also send them out again after this. But let's just go for it. Questions, thoughts, comments. Evie.
I just wanted to ask Joe, can you say the last line again? Articulate.
Oh, clearly, concisely, quickly. Clearly,
Okay.
concisely, quickly.
Thank you.
I was actually thinking of Dr. Squatch commercials that I get on my phone often because of the
soap
humor
guy.
that they use. Yeah.
Really funny soap commercials for men, and they're so funny. Yeah,
They
it makes
are.
me want to buy the soap, but it's for
I
men.
know,
Yeah.
they do. So
The-
I was thinking about that because it is all value in it.
Well, this is when you talk about commercials like that, it's a reflection of someone's self-image. And the marketing in play there is when someone actually has a self-image of themselves, the marketing speaks to their own self-image. They behave consistently with their self-image, and it's self-reinforcing, which is like, that's how I see myself, or a lot of it's aspirational. That's how I want to see myself. This is the, and you talk about the jerky with the I mean, you said Sasquatch soap, but there's the Sasquatch with the jerky, and they always have the mountain biker guy or the rock climbing guy, run-in with Sasquatch type of thing. And it's just like, someone's like, yeah, that's how I picture myself. I'm out there mountain biking like that dude, not like the goofy dude that they're showing that Sasquatch is chasing. I should buy this product because I'm that type of guy, or I want to be that type of guy. And the aspirational aspect of that, where someone wants to see themselves as something that they aspire to be, is actually key to marketing a lot of these products. This is where all the influencer marketing comes in. You see someone that you aspire to be, whether it be Peyton Manning or Kanye West. If you see them using a product, you're like, I want to be like that person. I want their life. Maybe if I buy the things they buy and use the things they use, my life will be a little bit closer to theirs. And that's how people behave. And it's actually very, very effective, because you're feeling you're feeling a need that they have. Like maybe it might be soap or it might be food, but you're feeling a psychological need that they have, not necessarily just the need of, I need food or I need to wash myself. There's a lot more to it than that.
It's pretty obvious in Dr. Squatch, they need women because it's all women smelling the soaps. and healthy.
Yeah, they have these great looking guys using this soap, and then all these women just being like, you smell so good. Like, okay. They did a great job. Smita, do you have a question?
Yes, I do. Joe, thank you so much for this presentation. This is really great. So I liked it a
You're
lot. I had a question. So I'm in the process of starting my business, and I'm in this mode of like validating that the problem exists. And I wanted to ask if you could give some guidance on, let's say I validate that the problem exists. I create a service. I'm creating a service type business, and then I launch it, and I need to revise it, or I learn more as I go along. Um, have you seen other businesses do that? And what are some tips that you have if I need to do that?
One is, don't be scared to just get out there and do it, and don't be afraid of losing customers if you change.
Okay.
So part of this idea is if it changes and the customer that you initially had doesn't like the change, then they weren't your original customer to begin with, and it's okay for them to go away. So if you're adjusting it to reach a broader segment of the customers that you really want, having the initial customers go away is not a big deal. You always have to work on the assumption that there's always another customer that's going to come in. So you don't want to have poor customer service. You don't want to make people mad, but you can't be timid about it. You can't not interact with the customers. So some of this is recognize that iteration, the first round, you might get it wrong. And you may have annoyed your initial customer and they may never come back. And that's okay. So recognize it's not going to be for everyone. 2 is don't try to appeal to everybody. That's the first way to have something that appeals to nobody in particular. I'll give you an example of this. I was at the U of O and I was judging a business plan. It wasn't a business plan competition. It was like a class on student ideas. And they went out and they did a survey and they came back and they said, and then when they were doing their presentation, it's like, well, we actually went out there and took a survey. And what we found when we did this survey is that only 20% of the people responded. That doesn't seem like, it doesn't seem like a great idea. I'm like, 20% of the people that you talked to said they would pay for this? That's 1 in 5 people. That's really good. They're like, but what about the 4 or 5 people? The 4 out of 5 that said no. I'm like, the 4 out of 5 that said no are not your customers. The 1 out of 5 that said yes are your customers and said they would pay for this. Focus on what they're saying, not we went and interviewed a broad swath of the population and only got 20%. This might not be a product that works. So part of this is understanding that there is your customer. There's probably a lot more people that are not your customer because you're not solving their particular problem. And recognize that and be open to it. So finding someone that's not a customer, that's clearly not a customer because they don't respond to your value proposition, is a good feedback loop. It means you've identified that they're not a customer. The idea is to get to where you have people that are clearly your customers and people that are clearly not your customers, and not everyone where it's unclear whether or not they're your customer. So it's, the advice would be find someone who responds to the value proposition and as quickly as possible get them to pay for it. And it seems like then you've clearly identified that you're solving a problem that's worth paying for them. And then find out what it is about you're solving for them, and then repeat the process again and again and again, and stay focused. There's always a temptation to go broader, try to get more people. And to me, it's like, stay true to what your value proposition is and stay focused. And eventually you will reach more people like that. And it'll be much easier to target them if you can find a way to target them through a particular channel. And this is like, if it works on TikTok, you're probably going to get the whole everyone who's on TikTok, which is, you have a picture of people that are on TikTok, ages 12 to 18, on cell phones, some of them starting to pay money for silly things, which is like, those are your customers and you're appealing to them, stick with it. They have huge purchasing power. Don't try and broaden out where it no longer becomes appealing to your target audience. Or if you find a channel that's really working, you may tweak slightly because you find, and this is how all these things in the canvas work together. If you find a channel that's working particularly effectively for you, as in it's a low-cost channel, you can reach a lot of people and you're getting a huge response. It may not have been the initial market that you thought it was there, but you don't have to do this broad-based advertising campaign to reach everyone on the planet, because you've reached this sub-niche of individuals that have a certain profile that you can target really effectively and really, really cheaply. And then you start leaning toward that market that's really, really easy to market to. Does that help answer the question?
Yeah, that was great. This gave me a lot to think about. So thank you.
Well,
So on that same note, I think a lot of startups that I work with tend to think that they need to have their product perfect before they launch it into the world. Can you just speak a little bit about that hesitancy around I need to make
Oh,
it totally perfect and then I'll share it?
yeah, perfection's a direction. So getting your product just perfect, yeah, I totally understand it. Resist the urge, get it into the market as quickly as possible. If it's really, really solving a customer problem, even a partial solution that's on the way to being the perfect solution is something that they will gravitate toward. It can't be a horrible delivery of product. So part of this is what will customers accept? Usually just about anything if the customer service is good. That's actually, so if the customer service is good, if the product partially solves it and your customer service is good and you're approachable, this is actually the best case scenario. What you don't want is to deliver the product into the market and get zero feedback, because then you're left with the assumptions that it worked. We're just like, I made this amazing soap and everyone loves it because they love it. And then you find out it's like, actually, these people are buying it because it actually makes a good sealant for windows, and they're sealing their windows with it. And they told all their friends and they're all buying it, and you don't even know, in what context people are using your product. And that's kind of out there example, but it's like what you really actually want to do is get out there in the world, get your product out there and create that feedback loop so your customers are giving you feedback, which is what they love about it and what the shortcomings are. So I advise you to get the product out there as quickly as possible to your customers. Doesn't have to be perfect. If it's horrible, as in you deliver soap and it has like pieces of barbed wire in it, and you don't want to do that, but removing like razor blades from your soap is like, that's not perfection. That's actually a fairly low bar to climb. So it's like, get it good enough and get it out there. If it's truly solving the problem for your customers, they will accept it.
Awesome. Aida, you had a question. You want to unmute? You're still muted.
Okay, I'm unmuted.
Perfect.
Hi, thank you, Joe. I'm driving around doing Zoom, so it's a first. I thank you for your information. I never looked at, as you use soap being, like a yoga, the combination where you can borrow, and also about the customer questions. I do have face-to-face with customers, but I'm going to take that a little deeper. So thank you very much. It's been very enlightening.
You're welcome. Yeah, there's a ton of resources out there. And like I said, the value proposition design one actually has a lot of good tools about customer questions. And there's entire books on how to do customer interviews. And I'm going to talk a little, like you jogged something in my memory, which is like when you do your questions, you should approach it like a scientist.
Uh-huh.
Approach this like you're trying to falsify your assumptions. If you go out there and try to confirm your assumptions, it's really, really easy to do. We call it the fluffy dog. So like, hey, there's a small, fluffy, wonderful dog. Would you like to pet it? And everyone's like, no, hate dogs, bye. It's like everyone will be receptive to that kind of presentation. It's like, yes, you're telling me it's wonderful, therefore it's wonderful. I'm going to agree with you because you're telling me that it's all, and it's obviously wonderful. People are going to tell you that your product sucks to your face. They're going to sort of follow along, and you will think you have validation, but you get no paying customers. It's better to go out in the world and ask the customer, what are the limitations of this? Okay, what part of my solution isn't solving your problem well enough? What other things have you used to try and solve this problem, and what were their shortcomings? So it's almost going to the negative of trying to find out and dig deeper for that information in a way that doesn't give you that false validation that someone just says yes because you've asked them to agree. You think let me tell you about my business idea. Do you think my business idea is awesome and has potential? Most people are going to say, why, yes, it sounds awesome, because that's the polite thing to do. It takes a very perceptive mentor to tell you what your flaws are. And you also have to be receptive to that negative feedback. So if someone is telling you, you have to thank them for telling you the reasons why they wouldn't use your product. And even as a coach and mentor, I get about a 50-50 hit rate. Like I will tell people, like they'll pitch their product to me and I'll say, I can help you with your business. I'm not your customer here, so you have to realize that, because I'm not your customer. And then they go into full sales mode trying to convert me. into a customer where I'm just like, and they spend a lot of time talking. The other thing is, as you're going to seek validation and you're talking to your customers, be in total receive mode, listening and taking notes. Oftentimes, early stage companies, early stage founders, because they have to sell so often, you're selling your product, you're selling investors, you're getting people to try and pay attention to you. You are sort of in default sell mode all the time. So you spend way too much time talking about yourself and talking about your product, and not enough time listening to what other people are saying. And it's very, very difficult to do. It's almost like you need to put a sign like on the inside of your glasses, if you wear them, that says, stop talking, start listening, and remind yourself that what you actually want is the negative feedback from your customers about what's not working and how it's not solving their problem, and not just getting a yes. Because in the long term, the short term getting a yes gets you $1 in the bank. Long-term understanding what the problem is will actually allow you to build a huge company off of it. It's very, very hard to do. It's sort of like founder training. How when you need money in the bank, can you be in full sell mode and know when to turn it off almost immediately when it's time for you to listen and understand.
Very good. I want to thank you for the milkshake story. I think that just really triggered some things in my mind. So I really appreciate it. I'm not a startup, been in business going on 3 years, but I think it's always good to learn as much as you can. I learned a lot today. Thank
Good.
you.
The business model canvas can be applied to existing businesses as well as startups. It actually can be used for any business at any level, at any stage, really at any size, it can be used. It's very, very effective with startups because when you're starting up, when you start to develop that hypothesis of what you're building, it's the most impactful. It's also very, very impactful in existing companies because oftentimes they have grown without actually validating their business exists. We see this with a lot of, they call them lifestyle businesses, family businesses that just start and they start making money and they start growing. And then, something like COVID hits and, they reach out and say, hey, something's not working here. Our sales are going down. Can you help us? And you ask them like, well, who are your customers and why do they buy from you? And all blank stare. It's just like, we don't really know. We just know we made this thing and that people bought it. And now they're not buying it anymore. It's like, so you don't understand who your customers really were, or so we call that like they tried the field of dreams. They built something and people showed up, and that happens a lot. And they will make a sustainable business out of it until it's no longer a sustainable business. And this is what you see time and time again, where companies are caught flat-footed by changes in the industry they didn't think would happen. Do we have enough time for me to tell the Blockbuster story and ask the question?
Totally.
Who here remembers Blockbuster Video? Money.
I do.
What's the answer?
I'm sorry, I heard a Blockbuster. I just turned the car off, so I didn't hear. I just heard Blockbuster.
Wait,
So
sorry, say your question again.
Oh, so how did Blockbuster Video make money?
You had to come in, rent the videos.
Video rentals.
Anyone else?
They created an environment where people could go almost as a date to go pick out their videos and touch and feel the videos.
Yep, and I'm going to give you a surprise answer. Blockbuster Video made most of their money exactly the way movie theaters make money. How do movie theaters make money?
Concession.
Popcorn.
Popcorn. It's concessions. It's exactly how it worked. So you can actually see when the streaming services, when Netflix came along with the mail-in services, I always have this picture in my head. I imagine like a guy, at Blockbuster Video, big old guy with a cigar going, that'll never work. How are people going to buy candy? Oh, it's like, it was actually a storefront for actually selling concessions. Yes, they had late fees. Yes, they rented videos, but the majority of their money was made on the stuff. And if you remember a Blockbuster, half the front of the store was like Twizzlers and whatnot. It was that whole movie experience, and they were making a lot of money on those concessions. When things went online, Blockbuster was very, very resistant to changing because the business model became about the movement of physical products and food inside their store and weren't able to adapt to streaming because it totally would have undercut their business model. Totally would have changed it. So companies get flat-footed all the time by providing a value that was, I mean, this was a secondary value. People came in for the video, spent money on the food, and now when their entertainment can be delivered online, their behavior changed. And Blockbuster didn't adapt, nor did Hollywood or any of the video stores adapt quickly enough because they were blind to actually what was going on. They assumed that their business was going to run that way until the end of time. And again, you're seeing businesses fail because they deliver the value to the customer and then customers change. They start behaving differently for different reasons because they don't understand what the customer really wants. The customer accepts what's there. And with streaming services, I can tell you right now, like regular television with channels, you know, if any single channel on television right now said, you can get our channel right now without commercials, all you have to do is pay $1 a month, I'd be like, done, where's the button? Which is, I don't watch regular TV anymore. Anytime I can see a show without commercials, I'm streaming. You know, so all the advertisers that are advertising on TV are starting to get like, hey, after COVID, everyone is streaming everything. All these streaming services are up. How can we sell commercials on TV? It's like, you can still sell them, but no one's watching them. So you're going to see this change in the business model of television, which you're already seeing, which is going all streaming and all the competing streaming services. And it's happening rather rapidly. What, the Paramount network, which is CBS is now the Paramount network after it buys up all of Paramount. And it's changing rapidly. So you're actually seeing Disney versus HBO versus the Paramount network in terms of what do they have available to sell to their customers, and people are going there for the content, you know, and paying directly as a subscription fee to have access to the content through multi-devices, which is your phone, your laptop, your TV. It all works together. It's the new way. So we'll see losers. So, and it is past 11, and I have to actually get ready for my next meeting.
Excellent. Well, thank you so
Okay.
much, Joe. I really appreciate it. That was very valuable. I think everyone gave a lot of great feedback. So thank you so much. You're awesome.
Yep.
Thank you.
Okay, you're welcome.
Great.
Good
Thanks,
luck.
everybody. I'll send you more information
you.
after the fact.
And reach out to your mentors and reach out to the services that are there for you. They are there to help you work through some of these ideas. And now this idea, which is new in the last 10, 15 years, has now become common knowledge around entrepreneurial support organizations. So you start talking about business model canvas or value proposition canvas or 10 types of innovation. This is all stuff that's out there that they all know how to talk about. So,
Awesome.
right.
Thanks, everybody. Thanks, Joe.
Have a great day.
Bye.
Bye.
Take care.